Nearly 17 years ago, a man under the alias Yule released a mod for Warcraft 3 Reign of Chaos. The objective of the game was simple. Both teams have to destroy an enemy building known as the Ancient. The game slowly gained popularity and was played more and more at homes and in cyber cafes alike, competing with other popular titles like Counter-Strike, Age of Mythology, etc. Fast forward a few years, the updated version of the original Dota, known as Dota All-Stars, was now so popular that it was being played at the Electronic Sports World Cup, BlizzCon, and even the World Cyber Games. A game that was built and maintained purely by a community that loved it, it was a gem amongst its peers. After 2 years in development, it was released in a closed beta in 2011.
Well, this is the beta for Dota 2, the very, very closed beta, as you can see by the number of players online. Not exactly high, is it? No.
And if that wasn't enough, Valve announced that it'd be holding a $1 million international tournament for the game.
The GG is a call from eHome. Navi have just won $1 million. eHome do take home $250,000 in second place, but Navi are the champions.
I'm not crying, you're crying, stop.
As the years passed, the prize pool increased, and so did the number of people who played the game. But over the last few years, the community has raised concerns over its declining user count and the lack of new players. Now, we could just say that it's a hubbub caused by a disgruntled few who don't like the new patches, or we could make a serious inquiry and ask ourselves the dreaded question: is Dota truly a dead game? Now, for a true and complete analysis, we're gonna need some stats. And so, we'll be referring to Steam Charts, a website that monitors the month-over-month player count for all the games played on Steam. A quick look at the charts will show us that the average player count has dropped approximately from 573,000 players in December 2015 to 384,000 players in December 2019, a 32% decrease. The average viewership at the International has gone up 77% since 2017, and peak viewership has gone up 112%. Although it's too little data to form a proper conclusion, it might be the case that as the Dota player base grows older, more and more people watch the game instead of playing it actively. While there have been highs and lows through the years, it seems that the community's fear isn't ill-founded. The data, at least the one available in the public domain, seems to indicate that the game might just be dying. But that doesn't tell us why the game is dying, or how we can prevent it from dying. Let's deal with these ideas one by one. The first reason is the sheer depth and complexity of the game. Let's face it, ever since the game was released, it didn't really tell you what you're supposed to do or how you're supposed to play. Just knowing each item there is and what it actually does is kinda ridiculous when you consider that there are 114 heroes and so many items that, frankly speaking, I couldn't even properly count them. The fact that Valve hasn't bothered finishing the tutorial section for the game doesn't help our case either. It's not surprising that most people, upon hearing about this, don't even bother installing the game. Apart from this, the amount of toxicity that runs rampant in the game can also play a factor as to why the player base is declining.
Omni is idiot, just report him. Look at Omni, idiotica. Freaking controlling courier, dude.
Dota can be a very stressful game to play.
The echo, we don't need the echo. No, we need the echo. We need the echo slam on the gyrocopter. Right now, go!
The fact is that many players don't even queue up with their friends, despite it being a heavily team-based game. The solo matchmaking experience for ranked and unranked modes is pretty disheartening for many players, and even more so for the newer ones. Consider this: a new player installs Dota for the first time, plays a bunch of bot matches to understand the game, and finally gets a feel for how it works. He decides to finally queue for a normal game and runs into a smurf with thousands of hours, either on his team or on the enemy team. If the Smurf is an enemy, he completely demolishes the new player. And if the Smurf is on the newbies team, they get flamed by a much more experienced player.
Report this son of a trash. Look.
The result? A toxic environment is created with the new players discouraged for queuing for another game. Another big but perhaps overlooked reason could be the fact that Dota has a high barrier of entry. The youth of today is playing a lot more on their mobile phones than they are on PCs. Owning a computer that is good enough to run Dota is a much bigger investment than owning a smartphone, which have become commonplace. Games like PUBG Mobile and Mobile Legends are able to reach this young audience much better than a game like Dota. As a result, the game has started to become somewhat insulated from a large group of the next generation of gamers. This could explain why Dota really hasn't seen a surge of new players in the last few years. On top of this, the only marketing that Valve does each year is around TI. TrueSight, Battle Pass, etc. make the entire time near TI sound very appealing. But apart from those few months, players are gravitating towards the games that market themselves consistently. Fortnite, League of Legends, PUBG Mobile, etc. due to their advertisements on various platforms attract a lot more players than Dota does. As a result, Valve has begun facing indirect competition from these titles. There are lots of other reasons that we can talk about, but for the sake of this video, we're gonna move on to suggest some remedies that could hopefully revive the game's dying player base. First, a way to ease the steep learning curve of Dota. It's a well-known fact that Dota is a super hard game to learn and even harder game to master. If CSGO's learning slope looks like this, then Dota's learning slope kinda looks like this. What would really help is having a comprehensive tutorial that introduces a player to both aspects of the game, micro and macro. Micro as in the mechanics of a particular hero and items, and macro as in strategies and tactics such as reading the map and playing for the objectives. The tutorial doesn't necessarily need to cover all the aspects, but rather just show the player how one can think about the game. Second, a system that incentivizes players to play with each other instead of solo queuing. Dota is a team-based game, and yet the yardstick with which we as a community measure our skill is our solo MMR. Recent changes by Valve are trying to push the community in this direction. The concept of solo MMR has now become obsolete. After all, it seems logical. The way you measure a team is not by the performance of an individual, but by the performance of the entire unit. Not only this, but it may also prove to be an effective way to combat the hostile environment that currently seems to be plaguing the Dota landscape. Players are much less likely to get toxic when playing with a group of people that they recognize and share a real-life bond with. Lastly, in order to attract and retain new players to the game, Valve needs to start marketing the game while making a system that punishes smurfing harder. For example, if new players were asked to input a phone number in order to get into the game, the number of new Smurf accounts would reduce drastically. If this is done in tandem with increasing communication and interacting with the community, it will create a loyal and passionate fan base. Take Dota Underlords for example. The game sees frequent communication from the developer side and weekly patch updates to ensure that the game doesn't become too imbalanced. While updating the game at the same frequency may not be a viable solution for Dota, marketing the game
Thor, he's back. That kid on the TV just called me a dickhead again.
while improving the new player experience can revive the community. Dota is dying, but with the right steps, we can reverse the process and give it life. By making our voice reach the right people, the legacy of Dota can continue to live on. We'd be really glad if you could share this video with your friends. You can like the video if you liked it, and if you have any topics that you think we should cover or talk about, do let us know in the comments below. We hope to make more such content for you guys, so please subscribe to our channel if you enjoyed our content. That's it for this video guys. AFK signing off.